Walking through the pain of a broken heart? Then tune in to Mystic Radio with Rob and Alexis. If you are a widow, navigating loss, or curious about mediumship, join them. Experience live on-air connections between clairvoyant medium Rob and Alexis and her deceased husband, Bob, alongside somatic practitioner and healing guide, Mary Stephenson. Download the KKNW app Fridays at 8 a.m. Pacific or find them on your favorite podcast platform. And let this show help you heal.
Welcome to Mystic Radio with Rob and Alexis.
And I'm Bob Ordinero, Robin's husband and producer of Mystic Radio, which is an experience, not an explanation.
Clearing energy for the show.
Welcome back to Mystic Radio. I am Spirit Lady Robin Alexis, and I am known as Spirit Lady because that is what my husband, Bob Bordenaro, nicknamed me from the moment he met me. Bob opened the show live once a week for 19 years, and now what you just heard is a recording of his voice. Bob left his body on March 14th, 2026, but he's still here in spirit and he's still producing this show. Each week I hear Bob telepathically tell me the theme of the show. And this week he says the theme of the show is, quote, death is not real, quote. We're going to have quite a conversation about that because his death feels very real to me. So let's bring on Mary Stephenson now, who is helping me cope with being a widow. Welcome, Mary.
Oh, thank you, Robin. And hello, listeners. I'm really glad to be here today. And Robin, as always, to be by your side. So I am Mary Stephenson, and I am a somatic practitioner, which means that in my work, I work with all kinds of people in their situations, but I also work with grief and the deep shock and transition of loss, really helping the individuals with their body and the process of what the mind is struggling to hold. So, you know, Robin, I think this is our 7th episode. So for the first 6 episodes, we did many things, but also I want to bring up the gong because I'm not sure that we've actually spoken about
No, we
what
haven't.
that was all about.
Yeah, well, first of all, Mary, when you first heard the gong, as part of Bob opening the show in the recording, how did you feel with that? Because I started crying when I heard it. I was wondering how you experienced it.
It's like the continuity has never left
Mm-hmm.
from
And
all
for
those years.
yeah, and for people who don't understand continuity, I just said the show was on for 19 years on KKNW. It was actually on other stations as well. Um, and Bob opened the show with his beautiful, beautiful special voice, and he would always play the gong to clear the energy for the show. And so he's still doing that in the way that he can. And I can feel Bob's presence with us right now, and he's saying, "Get on with the show."
Okay, I know I can feel that too. Well, I would love to just get your sense of where we are. You know, the first 6 shows, there was many themes of, friendship and really remembering how much of an impact Bob has made. So maybe you want to share just your sentiments, Robin.
I do. I mean, the point of bringing this up is we didn't do a funeral for Bob. This is our celebration of his life. He was a radio man. We're continuing it. And, being able to hopefully help other people not fall into some of the trauma and drama that Bob and I both did because we were innocent. We didn't have information. We didn't know what we didn't know. And so I'm really hoping this show helps people prepare for death, which is inevitable. And we're going to witness other people's death. We're going to experience our own death. And having friends it's like just a glorious thing. I talked about my friend Kim. I've been friends with her 40 years, and she knew when to show up before I even knew I needed her. And at some point, I still want to try to get her on the show so she can talk a bit more about that. And we had Bob's best friend, David Isaacs, on, and his very dear friend, Eric Creamer, on. And I want to talk a little bit about David Isaacs because first of all, I love the show Cheers, and David wrote that show, and I have a jacket, a Cheers jacket from the set of that show, and it means the world to me. And I remember, still living in New Hampshire, my kids were young, and I would so look forward to once a week laughing, watching that show. And then to move to Beverly Hills with Bob and meet his best friend who wrote the show. And, these guys go way back, but they are as tight as my friend Kim and I are. And what I mean by that is, on March 5th, Bob was in the rehab center and he was having some problems. And I'll go into that more in the future when we delve into it, maybe in the next couple of shows. But ultimately, he had to be resuscitated at the rehab 3 times. And then he was resuscitated again in the ambulance. And then I met him in the ER. And they said, the doctor was like, we don't know if he's going to make it. We don't know if he does make it, if he's brain dead. There's so many variables. And while the doctor's telling me all of this, my phone rings and it's David Isaacs. So somehow, out of the blue, David knew to call when Bob was on the brink of death. And so I held the phone up to Bob's ear and I said, listen, David, I don't know if he can hear you or not, but this may be the last time you speak with him. So just tell him whatever you want to tell him. And David did. And it was so beautiful. And then I hung up, and then the doctors like swooshed around me very rapidly, thrust paperwork in front of my face and said, we know what he needs. He needs a second heart surgery. And so they did the second heart surgery, and Bob recovered remarkably well from that, except they couldn't get the respirator out. And so when I said on the last show, Bob talked, I meant he became conscious. He had his personality being expressed, even though he was shaking his head yes and no. He was Italian, so he was very expressive with his movements, even though he couldn't talk. He had a respirator in. And so then he got really sick with pneumonia. He had 3 different kinds of pneumonia, and it didn't look too good. And who calls again but David Isaacs? And Bob was conscious this time. So I held the phone up to Bob's ear, and as David was talking, Bob was shaking his head yes or no, and I'd tell David what he was saying in response. And Bob had tears streaming down his eyes because
Oh, sweetie.
here he was, he got to be with his friend. And
Yeah.
I know that meant the world to David too. And then, shortly after that, Bob did die. And so the first person I called after Bob died was his dear friend David, because they were the closest. Bob loved me, he loved the cats, and he loved David Isaacs, basically. I mean, he had a lot of other people that he cared for deeply, but the
Yeah.
kind of special, special love that keeps on the legacy of love. And love transcends death. So people say you don't take anything with you when you die. Actually, you do. You take love.
Mm, that's
And
wonderful.
yeah, and so this beautiful experience with David, to have him come on the show and share their private boy journey into manhood, and how, Bob was such an integral part of this massive career that brought worldwide entertainment to people. And that's how David met his wife of 37 years. And so just the legacy, it's like that is such a cool celebration of everything. Not only Bob's life, we're on the radio for him and the podcast, but the special love that he had with David. And then of course to hear Eric speaking about how much he influenced his career,
Yeah.
that he's now doing the job that Bob had when he met him. So it's just such beauty to honor my husband in the ways that we've been able to do on the show. And at first, I could not allow other people to be around me who were grieving Bob, because I was so in my own grief. I couldn't handle holding space for someone else's grief.
Yeah.
So to be able to do the show and share it with you, and when I wasn't strong enough, you stood up and did it for me. It was just incredibly beautiful. And I hope that people listening have beautiful friends that they go hug and, spend more time with, or call them up and tell them that you love them. And it's just so special to have dear, dear friends. And of course, you are, Mary, a dear friend, and Kathy, Coralie and the Soul Spa members on the private membership, and the clients that I have. I mean, I'm so, 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 so grateful. And my kids have been amazing. So just so grateful. And I hope other people have a support system when they experience a profound loss in their lives, is the whole point of this.
And oh my gosh, and the vulnerability of you sharing your raw path of this grieving experience and also pulling in sort of the soul lessons or the life experience that Bob had with these, amazing men, and how the loyalty of the heart, and the bond that gets created, and it transitions with us. And the soul, through this radio show, the soul of Mystic Radio is sort of shifting and learning a new language. We're teaching a new language because you're willing to share the journey of grief. And that is incredible. And the last thing I would just say is talk about, where everybody knows your name.
Yeah,
The
that's
theme
true.
song. I mean,
Eh,
how incredible that if we just, there are other shows that David also did. Oh my gosh, where do we even start? Like The Simpsons or MASH, but just knowing that Bob's soul was also intertwined with that as well, because he was part of the journey in that way, and that he's still here. And in a few minutes, we are going to take a break, but I will say that he wanted the topic tonight to be death isn't real, or this morning, some morning show. Death isn't real. But what does that mean? What does that mean? I know we're going to have to take a break, but Robin, maybe what does that mean to you before we take a break?
Well, first of all, I take debate with it, just like I always did when he was in his body in the living room with me. That's a broad statement. And I do understand that he's come to a place where he understands that what is eternal is his consciousness, and that he, through me as a clairvoyant medium, can communicate. And before we go to the break, Mary, I want to say that I would bet there are thousands of people listening to the show who have experienced the death of someone that they do continue to communicate with. Just because you don't call yourself a medium or a clairvoyant medium, I believe all of us have the ability to communicate with our loved ones. We have to be willing to communicate with them. I think a lot of them want to talk to people, but they feel like they can't unless they're invited.
Right.
And then I know there's a lot of people who I've talked to who they aren't professional mediums, but they certainly are in communication with people on the other side. So let's encourage that, stay safe in your communication, and we can maybe talk about that. But if you really know that you know that you know through your own intuition, that trust and act upon your own intuition, and you're feeling like you have communication with your loved one on the other side, then that is awesome. And please like and share and comment on the show and the podcast. And maybe we can bring you on. Let's hear your stories, because I know I'm not alone as a widow. And I know I'm not alone being able to communicate with my husband who's dropped his body.
Absolutely. I agree with everything you just said. And we're going to take a short break, but please stay with us. And we'll come right back to explore a little bit more of Bob's message and your interpretation and your experience. We'll be right back.
If you are ready to find a pathway back to an embodied experience of healing and inner truth, you don't have to walk alone. Mary Stephenson is a somatic practitioner and healing guide who can help you. Receive a special rate of $100 off your first session using the code MYSTIC by visiting her site, marystephenson.com/coaching. That's Stevenson, spelled STEPHENSON.com/coaching. Your space to heal is waiting.
This is Martha Norwalk. Every Sunday morning, beginning at 9 a.m., thanks in part to NewProSupplements.com, we cover the world of animals. This week, August 23rd, it's an extra Sunday edition of Animal World, and I'm so excited because we get to spend it with one of my all-time favorite Animal World heroes. Dr. Jeff, Rocky Mountain Vet, will be with us live, and we'll get to know him and hear all about his incredible life of service to animals. Martha Norwalk's Animal World, Sunday morning, 9 a.m. to noon, right here on Alternative Talk, AM 1150.
Welcome back. We are so glad you're here. We're going to continue the conversation with Rob and Alexis on navigating a relationship when your loved one passes and things change form, but it hasn't ended. So before the break, we're talking about Bob's ongoing presence and, coming back to this question about, Robin, for you in your experience with death and mediumship, when Bob comes through, does it comfort your body? Does it activate your grief, or do both happen at the same time?
Well, the first time he communicated to me was about the washing machine, which is actually what we talked about in the very first show. And during that time, it was nerve-wracking because I questioned the legitimacy of my experience because I was like, okay, I'm in such extreme trauma and grief. How can I trust that this is really him? But when the plumber validated that if I hadn't got the washing machine replaced, I was going to have a massive flood in my basement. It's like I almost needed to, even though I am a professional medium, I needed that validation to go, okay, this is really Bob. And so it's taken time. He died March 14th, and I won't even say the day that we're recording the show, but it's taken me time to feel comfortable with his presence. And the most recent time he came to me, I was sitting downtown on a bench on Mount Shasta Boulevard, which is essentially Main Street in Mount Shasta, California. It was July 5th. And I was sitting there by myself, just watching people walk by. And all of a sudden, Bob came to me, and I was so excited because I hadn't felt him around. And
Mm.
he was just, touching base. He was really happy that I was downtown. He was happy that I was with my daughter, who I hadn't seen in 8 years. And she was in a store shopping. And I was on cloud nine. I was like floating. I was so, so happy. It felt so good, just jubilant. And then my daughter came out of the store and we were walking down the street, and all of a sudden, this dog just lunged at me and bit me. And it hurt. And we came right back home so I could treat the bite. And I've had several healing sessions with people, and I've got a big black and blue on my arm. And I wondered if the dog didn't sense
Mm.
Bob's presence around me, and maybe that's why it bit me. I don't know, but it wasn't fun, I can tell you that. So so to answer your question, it's been a progression,
Yeah.
and it was jubilance, and then for some reason the dog bit me right after that experience, and I don't know if Bob was still in my field or what happened.
That makes so much sense to me. You know,
Why?
well, because animals pick up so much about energy in the field or fear, or if they don't understand something, they feel threatened.
Ah,
So, and we don't, and if an animal has been abused at all, they're more than likely to do that. So I'm sorry that happened to you. That's your body's going through a lot with
yeah.
this too, because it's easy to be, in sort of the experience of that love, but then there's this kind of bringing yourself back into the physical body because the brain itself is looking to rewire because it misses the person, the nervous system. So you're teaching your body and your nervous system how to move forward without the physical presence of Bob. And so I'm curious, now that you've had that physical experience of the dog getting you back into your body,
Yeah.
how are you navigating that just experience in the body
Well, I'm taking it as a lesson that whenever Bob comes through, I need to make sure I close my energy afterwards. It's sort of like, my angel wings were wide open, and what I now know I need to do is I need to wrap them back around me when the conversation telepathically is over. And, that's something we always did in the show. That's why Bob played the gong at the beginning of the show, was to clear the energy, because during those shows it was a live call-in show. It was an hour show, and people called in from all over the world. We had no idea who they were going to be or what their issues were. And I would just spontaneously be able to tune into them live on the air and answer their question, whether, they were having problems at work, problems with a partner, problems with their health, mediumship, whatever it was they needed. My psychic abilities is extraordinarily eclectic because I've had 3 near-death experiences. So I know what it's like to be dead and then come back into the body again. But when we did the show, because I was so wide open, tuning into so many different fields of people, it was really important to open the show judiciously,
Yeah.
do the show judiciously, and then at the end, close it. But I wasn't thinking about that in terms of communicating with Bob until I got the dog bite. Then it was like, okay, I have to look at that like the show, or like when I'm giving someone a reading or sending remote Reiki. I need to open it, experience it, and close it. And that's wisdom for anybody listening. If you're waking up to your own psychic abilities or whatever you want to call them, think about that. That, maybe at home you've got a wide open energy field. But
Mhm.
when you go out shopping, maybe before you leave the house, tuck it in a little bit. So you're not going to like randomly have strangers walk up to you and ask you for money or something, like i- if we're going to manage our energy and we are going to communicate to our loved ones on the other side, we need to have it be a spiritual practice that's has common sense to it. And I think that was the opportunity of being slightly bitten by a dog right after I communicated with Bob, was to become aware of my energy and manage it differently.
Absolutely. And, that brings up a really eclectic, unique question that not everybody is a widow and a medium. I mean, that's a very rare, unique experience, Robin. And I'm curious what it's like for this sort of deeper knowing of your mediumship to then be holding space for your human self, your human woman who's become a widow. What is that like for your mediumship to hold space for your human?
Well, I realized that my human Robin, who's in this body, is extremely grief-stricken and traumatized. And I knew I needed to get help. And actually, right after Bob died, I worked with a psychiatrist I've worked with before who does a technique called EMDR, which I don't remember what that stands for, but it's something that helps people move through stress really quickly. And I met with her 2 times a week for 3 weeks just to get over one phone call I had with the hospital social worker, who was giving me information that was unacceptable to the care for my husband. And I just wasn't going to tolerate it, but it flipped me out. And so I had to get help with my mental stability because it triggered me into other losses I've had and other abuse I've had with medical care. And I was like totally distraught. But I knew I was still going to need more help. And I wasn't sure, which direction to go in. And then Bob said to me, your life is an open book anyway. You've shared everything in your book, Spirit Lady, The Gift of Robin song. Everybody knows our story. Why don't you go back on the air and talk about being a widow and navigating simple things like I lost 20 pounds.
Yeah.
Like I wasn't eating, I wasn't drinking. And plus, Bob, God bless his soul, but he did not put money in the right places, and all the accounts got shut down. I had no money. My friends were gifting me money so I could get by until I could figure things out. Social Security was a nightmare to navigate. So being a widow as a human woman has been one tough walk.
Robin, what you just shared is so much for one human to hold. You are a new widow and you are also an experienced medium. And those two parts of you are living this loss in very different ways. The medium in you knows that Bob is still here. And then there's that human woman in you whose husband died. Your body has been through the shock of everything that happened medically. And it's stirring back up these earlier experiences. And the weight loss is a proof, right? You suddenly have to navigate these money challenges, Social Security, and the practical realities of life without having Bob physically beside you. And that's just an enormous amount for the brain and the body and the nervous system to absorb. And this is important because the patterns of trauma responses are not a weakness. It's the nervous system trying to protect us. When something is too much or too overwhelming to process fully, the body is going to do one of many things. It'll freeze and it could shut down. It could become very highly reactive, or it keeps returning to the experience as though it is still happening. And I want to be tender here, Robin, because there is another layer here around forgiveness. We sometimes think forgiveness is something we do in the mind or the heart, but this is one of the reasons we work with the nervous system, because the mind may understand that something is over, and we may even consciously choose to forgive. Well, the body is still responding to the past as if the threat is happening now. So forgiveness does not mean to forget what happens, excuse it, or just pretend it didn't hurt. But part of the healing is helping the nervous system learn to feel the truth of the hurt and express it. And this is where witnessing becomes so important. Healing for all the listeners to know that when we no longer need to carry an experience alone, when we can stay present and have somebody listen without rushing us or having the body begin to feel less alone, the nervous system itself will begin to understand something new, that the event happened then with all of the experiences that it brought, but you are in this moment and we are here with you. And perhaps that is the part of the deeper meaning of Bob saying death isn't real. The relationship does continue. The love's there. And the person who is still here must also be held. So, Robin, I want to thank you so much for allowing us to witness both parts of you today. The medium who knows Bob is still here, and the human woman whose body is learning how to live without his physical presence beside her. And as we wrap up, for the listeners, I just want to name that we are learning together that the body grieves the absence and in its own time begins learning a new way to stay close to the person we love. If this conversation touched you in some way, please like and subscribe and leave us a comment. And Robin, if you have any final words, we'd love to hear from you. So next week, Robin, I think we're having a very special guest that has to do with a doll.
And proof again that Bob knew what he was doing about starting the show again. And Mary, Bob is saying we're going to change what PITA means. Instead of it meaning pain in the ass, it now means peace in the ascension. And that's what he means by death isn't real. That we can have the death of a pattern or a frequency that interferes with creating love. It's not just dropping the body death. Death can happen by choice, by letting go of that which doesn't serve us and have peace in the ascension. This has been Mystic Radio. Please like, share, comment. We'd love to hear from you.
See you next time.
You've been listening to Mystic Radio with Rob and Alexis. Are you a widow or grieving a deep loss? Are you curious about mediumship? Then this show is for you. Join clairvoyant medium Robin Alexis as she speaks live on the air with her deceased husband, Bob, while being supported by somatic practitioner and healing guide, Mary Stephenson. Download the KKNW app Fridays at 8 a.m. Pacific, or listen wherever you get your favorite podcasts. If you are suffering from a broken heart, let this show help you heal yourself.